Hey, Shalom Akim, Shalom, Shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash, whatever honors the apostles and the elders of great millstone for teaching us his truth and citations to the sincere Akim and Aquath and listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. For today's lesson, I kind of just wanted to title it this phenomenon known as son-husband syndrome. So this is a basically an unhealthy dynamic between sons and the mother, right? And basically this is what happens when there is essentially a lack of order in the household, right? And this is something that is very, very common with our people, because with our people, we're one of the leading nations when it comes to having an absent father in the household, right? Jake essentially tops those statistics. So this is one of the end results of what happens to a lot of our households when there's a lack of a father figure present, right? You have a phenomenon known as, like I'm going to discuss today, known as son husbands, where the son essentially plays the role of a husband, and it creates a very lack of boundaries dynamic amongst the son and the mother, right? And sometimes this, well, not even sometimes, but this is very, very detrimental. So I'm just bringing out this lesson, if the shoe fits, wear it, right? But it shows a lack of boundaries. It can show also a lack of self-esteem on the end of a son. There is a less vibe to actually obtain responsibility. And a lot of this is also part of Esau's programming too. You had in the 60s something called the Great Society, with programs that were initiated by the former president Lyndon B. Johnson, and a lot of our households were essentially destroyed, right, when they didn't have the father in the household. And a lot of women were incentivized to essentially take on these programs and essentially marry to the government and take on these different philosophies, right? So a lot of our women today have this mindset that they can play both father and mother. So let me start off with that, and I sincerely pray that this lesson is edifying, right? So let me start off in regards to that programming. Okay, this is Genesis 3 verse 6, and it reads, "And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also her husband with her, and did eat." Right? So and this is a phenomenon that happens today. So this eating is taking on the vibration of these different philosophies, right? And this is what happens when we swayed from the natural way. And Paul outlines this in 1 Corinthians, the 11th chapter, right? But we swayed from the natural way, the orderly way, and then what happened is created these unhealthy dynamics. So now you have a lot of women that actually believe that they're able to do good all by themselves. They're all independent, they don't need a man. And now they actually carry on that mindset into raising children that are essentially over emotional, they're ungodly, there is no understanding in them. They essentially become monsters. They become a bunch of ungodly children that just create havoc in the streets, right? So you start to see these unhealthy dynamics playing out when the family structure is pretty much broken. And this is all going back to a lot of these philosophies of the serpent, right? Because a lot of our women, they have this understanding that they can do all good by themselves, and they don't raise their children with the proper understanding. And what I want to do, I want to bring out a couple accounts as well to show you the importance of having a father in the household. As a matter of fact, I'll start with that one. Then I'll get to different aspects of this unhealthy phenomenon, right? So I want to go back to Genesis. Um, okay, this is Genesis chapter 28. I'll start at verse 1. And it says, And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him, and said unto him, Thou shalt not take a wife, excuse me, thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padanaram, to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. And the Most High Almighty Yahweh Bashim Shai bless thee and make thee fruitful and multiply thee, that thou mayest be a multitude of people. Right? So I'm reading this because it's a very interesting dynamic between a father and a son here. So now you have Isaac, giving this kind of commandment unto his son and giving them the proper instructions, which shows that there's a strong importance in having a father in the household, especially a father who is actually operating on a righteous vibration too, because you also have instances where you have the father in the household, but the father is not much of a father per se. He's not much of giving his children the proper guidance to essentially train up their, like the scriptures talk about, training up their child in the way they should go, and then when they're old, they know they have a way to not depart from, to roughly paraphrase. So it gives them some kind of guidance, like we know it as precepts, right, to properly guide their children and actually get into that understanding of manhood or womanhood. Because a lot of the times when you have this unhealthy dynamic between the son and the husband, there is no what's the word I'm looking for, there is no strong desire for that son, for that boy to actually essentially grow up and get his own wife and make his own children and start his own family, right? But this is what you see here in this account here, and that Isaac is telling and instructing his son Jacob, right? It shows you again the importance of having, both of those parents in the household. And that is strongly what's missing within our nation, right? And that's another thing also. A lot of our women essentially, as mothers, they destroy their sons in the sense of it may not be actually mental, it may not be physically, excuse me, but it also can be mentally because of that unhealthy dynamic. Maybe things kind of went sour between her and the father, and then now um that emotion kind of still rests in their mind, and she pushes that unhealthy emotional vibration upon the children to the point where she, there is no essentially a distinction, so essentially she might just lash out. It can lead to a child being essentially being disciplined, incorrectly disciplined, right? Like they're being punished for something that they didn't do wrong, right? Or it can even lead to unhealthy self-esteem in that child, in the sense of that child is now being emotionally abused. For example, oh, your daddy wasn't shit, so you ain't shit, right? That type of mindset, right? And that sticks with you because those words cut, right? A woman is supposed to be able to nurture her children, right? As a matter of fact, I think that's in Titus. Hold on, let me get that. Um, just bear with me. I kind of had a few points in regards to this lesson, so I think that's Titus. Okay, this is Titus 2 verse 4, and it says that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of the Most High be not blasphemed. Right. So this is proper training. You have a woman. That a lot of our women today do this. To the children, where they mentally abuse them, right? And it kind of break down their self-esteem. And Jake already, and this is one of the reasons a lot of our people have very, very poor self-esteem issues. Obviously Esau has a hand in this also, because he also shows a lot of terrible programming of a lot of you Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. They show you and portray you in a negative light. Like you're a pit bull, like you're a savage, you're a dog. You need to. I need to protect you from my white women and all that kind of stuff. Like you're a bunch of rapists and all that, right? Esau has a huge hand in this, but a lot of our women also are also to blame for this behavior and for this phenomenon as well, right? If a woman was actually in her right mind, they would actually have a some kind of boundary and encourage their children to essentially grow up and become that son, and essentially so he can cleave onto one flesh with his wife, and he can bring forth children. But a lot of our women are so broken mentally to the point where they use the son as a set of emotional crutches, and they hold on to them, so it kind of stifles them from actually growing up, if that makes sense. Right. So the next aspect I also wanted to get into for this lesson is the fact that there is a lack of boundaries also, and if the shoe fits, wear it, right? So there's a blurry line that is created with this ugly phenomenon, right? So I don't think I read and explained properly. So I just wanted to grab a couple points here of this unhealthy dynamic known as son husband syndrome. So it says single mothers may intentionally contribute to the son husband syndrome by placing emotional burdens on their sons. It says raising children without fathers can lead to a lack of imbalance and emotional immaturity in sons. The emotional aspect of this dynamic can result in an unhealthy relationship and difficulty in handling emotions, right? And that, what example of that is when you see a lot of these youths that be protesting, for BLM, and they're all emotional when they see certain things happen in the streets, right? If you had a father in a household, you would understand when you see these things, there's a certain way to conduct yourself with authority, right? But Jake doesn't understand and have though that guidance, like I was bringing out in the precept earlier, in regards to like with Isaac and Jacob. They don't have that guidance. Like he was saying, for example, stay away from these women. Take you a women of this set of stock, basically. And this is what precepts really do, because it gives us understanding of how to conduct ourselves, right? And it's something as simple as a situation, in dealing with conflict and dealing with authorities. Jake lacks that proper guidance. Something as simple as remembering, oh, a soft answer turns away wrath, right? But grievous words can stir up strife. Something as simple as that can get Jake out of a lot of situations. But because they might come from, a lot of our people come from these emotionally overburdened households where the mother is basically overbearing the children or the sons with emotion to the point where those children don't know how to handle their own emotions, right? So let me go back and read a little bit more here. So just reading a couple points off this website called podpage.com, and it says fathers play a crucial role in a child's life and should always be involved in their upbringing. It says oversharing and relying on children for emotional support can be damaging for their well-being. And it's true. That oversharing that's part of that blurring of the lines, right? Because a woman is supposed to be given to a man of understanding, right? And a lot of our women, they get into these situations and they don't have a man of understanding, so to speak, right? um let's see, it says here signs of a husband son relationship include financial responsibility, meditating conflict between parents, canceling plans with friends to be with the mother. Unhealthy dynamics involve open communication, boundaries, and allowing children to grow up and develop their own identities. Ooh, that's good. Okay, so let me get a precept. I'm just going to get another account actually in regards to boundaries, since they said that, because sometimes this is what happens when there's a disorder in the household, right? The family structure is very, very important, right? And Jake essentially lacks the fundamentals because they lack wisdom. Okay, so just bear with me on this. Okay, I will start at, just bear with me. Okay, I'll start at verse 40, but the point's really in verse 49. So just bear with me. This is Luke chapter 2, verse 40. So it says, and the child grew, speaking of Yahushua, and it said, wax strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of the Most High was upon him. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year for the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, he went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. And when they had fulfilled the days, as they returned, the child Yahushua tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother knew not of it. But they, supposing him to have been in the company, went a day's journey and sought him among the kinsfolk and acquaintance. And when they found him not, they turned back again to Jerusalem, seeking him. And it came to pass that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. And when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. This is Yahushua's cold answer. And it says, and he said unto him, Yahushua speaking, how is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not know that I was me about my father's business? Right, so in the NLT it says, but why did you need to search? He asked. Didn't you know I must be a fault? I must be in my father's house, right? So this is I wanted to read this because he shows that when Yahushua got to that certain age, he was just about on his purpose essentially, right? It's also a very interesting dynamic because essentially he's in a very I don't want to say a very peace. I could say it in a very peaceable way. He kind of rebukes his mother, right? And that's also establishing, like, okay, I'm about, my father's business. I can't, do this for you at the moment, right? So, and that's the same thing with us, right? The same mindset and same thing applies with us, right? We're about our father's business. We're about, trying to please the heavenly father and his son, and actually, like the scriptures talk about, the whole duty of man is to serve the most high and keep his commandments. For that is the duty of man, to roughly paraphrase, right? So, at a certain time, there's a level of essentially um manhood transitioning, from that boyhood to manhood. And that's something a lot of our women um don't understand. They might be upset by it, but it's an opportunity to actually, for them to respect you, because that's really what's very, very important. They may not like the answer. However, it's not about, being liked. It's about establishing that sentiment of respect, so to speak, right? So, um, I had another account actually in regards to. Let me see this a little bit more. Okay, so here. Okay, actually, let me go to the what's it called? Because through this different unhealthy like dynamic, there's also a sentiment of the boundaries, like I was bringing out earlier, but it's also that sentiment of like self-respect also, right? So this is what Howard Shah was kind of like checking his mother on, right? It establishes a sense of like self-respect, you know. Um, so this is the book. Hold on, just bear with me, because sometimes from what I've noticed, a lot of our women as mothers, they will become so over, they can be very, very overbearing to the point where um, uh, um, it causes mental distress upon you as an individual, as a son, right? And it can be very, very challenging, because if I don't know a Jake that's not close with his mom, right? But it has to be a sense of respect and boundaries established, right? And it can also taking on that financial, not financial, excuse me, that emotional burden, it can be weighing upon you. So that's why that boundary and establishing, that line in the sand is essentially important to establish, right? And it's also for your mental health and your personal development, whether she likes it or not. So this is Sirach chapter 10, verse 28, and it says, "My child, keep your self-respect, but remain modest. Value yourself at your true worth." This says, "There is no excuse for a person to run himself down. No one respects a person who has no respect for themselves," right? And that's important, especially, crossing that hurdle, journeying from boy to manhood, so to speak, right? And the same thing applies in establishing that self-respect. Sorry, establishing those boundaries, especially when you now there are boundaries that you have when dealing with with women, with your interactions with women, right? There are boundaries that you have, and you don't cross those, right? You don't want to let them cross those, excuse me, right? So I'll read verse 29 again, and it says, "There is no excuse for a person to run himself down," right? And that's kind of one of the things that a lot of our women, as mothers will do. They will cause you to essentially, they'll kind of guilt trip you, might make you might feel bad and all that kind of stuff, but that's causing more mental distress on you. So what to do to establish a sense of respect from yourself? There are moments where you have to pull away, right? There are moments, because she's kind of like, you know, like a whale that's that's trying to cause a lot of create and push a lot of like mental agony upon you, right? A lot of women do that because they're overly emotional, and they don't have essentially a man to kind of offset and deal with that emotion in the household in a righteous sense, right? Because she's supposed to have her own husband, right? You're just a son, that's it, nothing more, nothing less, right? So let me go to um there's also an account, I think, in Tobit, just to bring back the last point, the final point here. um so let me just get this. Okay, this is Tobit 4:19, and it says, "Blessed be the Lord, bless the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai always, and desire of him, and all thy ways may be directed, and all thy paths and counsels may prosper. For every nation hath not counsel, but the Lord himself giveth all good things, and he humbleth who he will, and as he will. Now therefore, my son, remember my commandments." Right? So this chapter is basically an outline of a father, Tobit in this situation, giving his son Tobias proper counsel and guidance on how to actually be and grow into that state of manhood, so to speak. And that's the ideal of how a family should run, right? You have a lot of our women, again, that give a lot of our children extremely bad counsel, right? And then that leads to the further destruction of our families and our households, right? So it says, "Now therefore, my son, remember my commandments, neither let them be put out of thy mind," right? So continuously meditate on these precepts, right? Because the scriptures say that through these precepts, you get understanding, right? And that is the blessing and the importance of having a father in the household, right? Yes, your mother is supposed to, nurture you and care for you. Her role is very, very, very important. She feeds you the good foods, and she it's good if she has a good knowledge of the herbs, and she makes sure her children are well fed. Those are all important, but the offset is to show you the importance of the father is to give his children, those sons, that spiritual guidance, so they know how to actually function, right? And that's what's missing with a lot of our young children, our in our nation today. They don't have those precepts, you know. That's why a lot of them are gonna, they're gonna perish in Jacob's trouble, because a lot of them have turned into a multitude of ungodly children that just love to use Esau's blessing to solve their problems, right? Rather than dealing with it in a diplomatic and a righteous fashion. So, anyways, that's pretty much the point. I think I covered all the points I wanted to hit, but I sincerely pray that this lesson was edifying, something that was just on my mind. And if the shoe fits, wear it, right? Some brothers, you're not in that situation, but you can take away and extrapolate different nuggets out of it, right? Because one of the things that our nation is missing is like the scriptures talk about, we're fathers unto the fatherless, right? So I sincerely prayed that brothers got something useful out of this, right? And I'll leave it there, but hopefully it's just edifying. I'd just like to say all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. Until next time, I say Shalom.